What if I told you that the greatest suffering in your relationships comes not from the other person's behavior, but from the words you speak silently to yourself about them every single day? What if the criticism, resentment, and distance you experience with those you love is created not by their failures but by the internal narrative you have been repeating in your mind like a mantra of separation and judgment? I have spent decades observing how human beings relate to one another, and I have discovered what the Buddha taught 25 centuries ago: the words we speak, both aloud and silently, have the power to create either suffering or liberation, either separation or connection, either conflict or peace. This is not a mental trick or modern psychology repackaged. This is the path walked by the Buddha himself and countless enlightened beings who understood that right speech, one of the essential aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path, begins not with what comes out of your mouth, but with what arises in your mind. Before we journey into this teaching that will transform every relationship in your life, I invite you to make a sacred commitment. In the comments below, write these words: I release attachment and embrace impermanence. When you write this phrase, you are declaring your willingness to let go of the way you have been relating to others, the patterns of judgment and demand and expectation that have created so much pain. You are opening yourself to a new way of being with the people in your life, a way rooted in the ancient wisdom of compassion and understanding. This is the first step toward transforming all your relationships from sources of suffering into opportunities for awakening. 1. Let me speak to you honestly about what happens in your relationships every single day. You wake up and immediately your mind begins its familiar routine of telling stories about the people in your life. Your partner did not listen to you yesterday, so you tell yourself they do not care about you. Your colleague received recognition at work, so you tell yourself they are favored and you are overlooked. Your parent criticized your choices, so you tell yourself they never believed in you. Your child behaves in ways you do not approve of, so you tell yourself you have failed as a parent. All day long, your mind spins these narratives, these internal words that create separation, resentment, fear, and loneliness. You are exhausted not by the actual relationships, but by the weight of these stories you carry about them. The Buddha identified this as one of the primary forms of dukkha, suffering, that permeates human existence. We create suffering in our relationships not because conflict is inevitable, but because we relate to others through the distorted lens of our own fears, attachments, and aversions. When someone behaves in a way that threatens our ego, we push them away with harsh internal words. When someone fails to meet our expectations, we judge them with criticism that poisons our hearts even if we never speak it aloud. When we fear losing someone's love, we cling to them with desperate internal demands that they never change, never leave, never disappoint us. All of this is the disease of avidya, ignorance of the true nature of reality, applied to the realm of relationship. We do not see the other person as they actually are, constantly changing, struggling with their own suffering, trying their best to find happiness. We see them only through the filter of what we want from them and what we fear losing, or tie. Many centuries ago, when the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree and awakened to the truth, he discovered something revolutionary about human relationship. He saw that all beings, without exception, are seeking happiness and trying to avoid suffering. He saw that every action, even those that seem cruel or selfish, arises from this fundamental drive combined with ignorance about how to actually achieve lasting peace. And he understood that when we see this clearly, when we recognize that the person who angers us or disappoints us is just like us, lost and searching and afraid, compassion arises naturally. The harsh words in our minds soften. The judgment transforms into understanding. The separation dissolves into connection. The Buddha's first teaching after his enlightenment was the Four Noble Truths, and they apply as much to relationship as they do to any other aspect of life. The first noble truth acknowledges that relationships contain suffering. Not that they are only suffering, but that suffering is woven into them as long as we approach them with ignorance and attachment. You know this truth intimately. The fear that your partner will leave you, the resentment when your expectations are not met, the loneliness even when surrounded by people, the exhaustion of trying to control how others perceive you and treat you. All of this is dukkha in the realm of relationship. The second noble truth reveals where this suffering comes from. It arises from tanha, craving, and upadana, clinging. We want others to be different than they are. We want them to fulfill our needs perfectly. We want them to never change in ways that threaten our security. We cling to our judgments about them, to our narratives about who they are and who we are in relation to them. And all of this wanting and clinging manifests as the words we speak silently in our minds about them every day. Words of criticism, words of fear, words of demand, words of separation. These words are not neutral. They shape how we see the other person, how we feel about them, how we act toward them. They create the very suffering we are trying to escape. But here is where hope enters, and this is the transformative power of the Buddha's teaching. The third noble truth proclaims that it is possible to end suffering in relationships completely, not by finding perfect people who never disappoint us, not by controlling others' behavior, but by transforming the words we speak internally about them. When the words in your mind shift from judgment to compassion, from fear to trust, from demand to acceptance, everything changes. The relationship itself may not become perfect, but your experience of it transforms completely. The fourth noble truth is the path to this transformation, the noble eightfold path, and at its heart is right speech, which begins with the words you speak silently to yourself. To understand how to transform your relationships through words, you must first understand the nature of the people you are relating to. The Buddha taught the 3 marks of existence, and they apply to every person in your life. The first mark is anicca, impermanence. Every person you know is constantly changing. Partner you fell in love with years ago is not the same person today. They have been shaped by experiences, aging, circumstances. Your parents are not the frozen images from your childhood. Your children are not who they will be next year. Even your own identity is constantly shifting. When you speak words in your mind as if the other person is fixed and unchanging, when you hold on to old grievances as if they define who someone is forever, you are fighting against the truth of impermanence. But when your internal words acknowledge change, when you say to yourself they are learning, they are growing, this moment does not define them eternally, you align with reality and suffering decreases. The second mark is dukkha, the suffering that arises when we cling to impermanent beings as if they could provide permanent satisfaction. When you speak words in your mind that demand others remain exactly as you want them, that insist they be responsible for your happiness, you create inevitable suffering because no person can fulfill that impossible role. But when your internal words release that demand, when you say to yourself their purpose is not to complete me, I am responsible for my own peace, freedom emerges. The third mark is anatta, non-self, and this is perhaps the most powerful teaching for transforming relationships. When you look deeply at the person who frustrates you or disappoints you, you see that they, like you, are not a fixed, permanent self, but a collection of constantly changing conditions. They are the product of their childhood, their culture, their experiences, their current circumstances, their fears and hopes. When you understand this, when the words in your mind acknowledge they are not acting from a place of evil but from conditioning, from their own suffering, judgment dissolves and compassion arises. Now let me teach you the specific words the Buddha taught to speak daily, both internally and externally, that have the power to transform all your relationships. These are not magic spells. They are practices that reshape your consciousness, that train your mind to relate to others from wisdom and compassion, rather than from fear and attachment. The Buddha taught 4 divine qualities, 4 ways of relating to all beings, that when cultivated through daily practice become the foundation of all healthy relationships. They are metta, loving, kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, sympathetic joy, and upeksha, equanimity. Begin each morning with the practice of metta, loving kindness. Sit quietly for just a few minutes and speak these words silently to yourself first. May I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free from suffering, may I live with ease. Feel these words not just as abstract concepts but as genuine wishes for your own well-being. The Buddha taught that you cannot authentically extend kindness to others if you have not first cultivated it toward yourself. So many relationship problems arise because we are trying to get from others what we have not given ourselves. When you fill your own heart with kindness through these daily words, you stop demanding that others fill the emptiness within you. Istaye, then extend these same words to someone you love. Bring them to mind and say silently, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be free from suffering, may you live with ease. Notice what happens when you speak these words genuinely. Your heart begins to open. The irritation you might have felt yesterday starts to soften. You remember that beneath all their imperfections, this person is just like you, seeking happiness and trying to avoid pain. Next, and this is crucial, extend these words to someone you find difficult, someone who has hurt you or disappointed you or angered you. This is where the real transformation happens. Bring this person to mind and speak the same words. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering. May you live with ease. At first, this might feel impossible or fake. Your ego will resist, saying they do not deserve my kindness, they hurt me, they were wrong. But remember, you are not condoning their harmful actions. You are recognizing their humanity, their suffering, their fundamental similarity to you. When you practice this daily, when you consistently speak words of loving kindness even toward those who challenge you, something miraculous happens. The resentment that has been poisoning your heart begins to dissolve. You discover you can hold their imperfection without collapsing under the weight of it. The second practice is karuna, compassion, which the Buddha described as the wish to remove suffering. Throughout your day, when you encounter someone who is struggling, whether it is your partner in a bad mood, your child having a tantrum, your colleague overwhelmed with stress, or a stranger acting rudely, pause and speak these words silently. You are suffering. Just like me, you want to be free from suffering. May your suffering ease. These simple words transform your entire perception. Instead of taking their behavior personally, instead of reacting with your own defensiveness or anger, you see beneath the surface to the pain that is driving their actions. When you see suffering clearly, compassion arises naturally, and compassion is the medicine every relationship needs. I knew a woman who had been estranged from her mother for years because of harsh words spoken long ago. Every time she thought of her mother, her mind would speak words of resentment and judgment. We taught her to practice karuna, to say silently every day, "My mother is suffering. She acted from her own pain and confusion. May she find peace." For months she practiced this, and slowly something shifted. The hardness in her heart softened. She began to understand that her mother's criticism had come not from hatred, but from her own mother's impossible standards that had been passed down through generations. This understanding did not erase what had happened, but it transformed the woman's relationship to it. She found she could maintain boundaries while still extending compassion. She discovered that forgiveness is not about saying the other person was right, but about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. The third practice is mudita, sympathetic joy, the capacity to celebrate others' happiness and success. This is a powerful antidote to the jealousy and comparison that poison so many relationships. When someone you know experiences good fortune, when your colleague gets the promotion, when your sibling's child achieves something wonderful, when your friend falls in love, speak these words silently. "I am happy for your happiness. Your joy adds joy to the world. May your good fortune continue." Notice how different this feels from the usual internal response of comparison and envy. When you genuinely practice mudita, when you train your mind to celebrate rather than compete, relationships transform from battlegrounds into gardens where everyone's flourishing is welcomed. The fourth practice is upeksha, equanimity, the profound balance of mind that remains steady whether experiences are pleasant or unpleasant. In relationships, this means speaking words internally that acknowledge you cannot control the other person, that their journey is their own, that you can love them without being responsible for their choices. When your partner makes a decision you disagree with, when your child chooses a path different from what you hoped, when a friend disappoints you, speak these words silently. This is their journey, not mine to control. I can care without clinging. I can love without demanding they be different than they are. This is the middle way applied to relationship, neither abandoning others in cold indifference nor suffocating them with controlling attachment. As you practice speaking these words daily, both silently in meditation and internally throughout your day, you will begin to notice profound signs of transformation. The first sign is a quality of spaciousness that emerges in your relationships. Where before there was constant tension, constant vigilance about whether others were meeting your needs, now there is room to breathe. You are not taking every action so personally. You are not interpreting everything through the lens of what it means about you. There is space for others to be imperfect, to have bad days, to struggle without it threatening your peace. You will also notice that conflicts resolve more easily because you are responding rather than reacting. When someone speaks harshly to you and your mind has been trained through daily practice to respond with compassion rather than defensiveness, the conversation takes a completely different direction. Instead of escalating into mutual attack, you might pause and say genuinely, "I can see you are upset. What do you need right now?" This simple shift, made possible by the internal words you have been practicing, changes everything. Another sign is a growing capacity for deep listening. When you are not constantly judging the other person in your mind, when you are not formulating your defense while they are speaking, when you are not comparing their experience to yours, you can actually hear them. And feeling heard, really heard, is one of the most healing experiences a human being can have. The Buddha taught that much suffering arises simply because people do not feel seen and understood. When you offer this gift of deep listening, made possible by the compassionate words you have been speaking internally, your relationships deepen in ways you never imagined possible. Perhaps the most beautiful sign of this practice transforming your relationships is the emergence of genuine love that is free from fear. Love mixed with attachment is love contaminated by the fear of loss, by the demand that the other person remain exactly as we need them to be. But love cultivated through these daily practices of metta, karuna, mudita, and upeksha is love that wants the other to be happy, even if that means they change or grow in unexpected directions. It is love that trusts in impermanence rather than fighting against it. It is love that sees the other clearly, including their flaws and limitations, and cherishes them anyway, not because they are perfect, but because they are human, struggling and seeking just like you. Let me give you one more practice that weaves all of this together. At the end of each day, before you sleep, review your interactions with others. When you remember moments of conflict or difficulty, instead of replaying them with the same judgmental narrative, speak new words silently. If you were harsh with someone, say, "May I forgive myself for acting from confusion. May I do better tomorrow." If someone was harsh with you, say, "They were suffering. May they find peace. May I not carry this resentment into tomorrow." If you experience connection and joy with someone, say, "May this goodness continue to ripen. May I remember to appreciate what is here while it is here." This daily practice of reviewing and reframing through compassionate words reshapes your entire relationship to your relational life. I want you to understand that this transformation does not happen overnight. The Buddha taught that the mind is shaped by habits developed over many years, sometimes over lifetimes. You have been speaking harsh, fearful, judgmental words in your mind about yourself and others for a very long time. Changing this requires patience and consistent practice. But every single time you catch yourself in an old pattern of critical internal speech and consciously choose to speak words of compassion instead, you are walking the path the Buddha walked. You are training your mind in the direction of liberation. This is the journey toward nirvana, toward the complete freedom from suffering that includes the suffering we create in our relationships. It is not about achieving perfect relationships with perfect people. It is about fundamentally transforming how you relate to all beings, including yourself, through the power of wise and compassionate words spoken daily with intention and sincerity. As we come to the close of this teaching, I invite you to begin this practice today. Choose one relationship that is difficult for you and commit to speaking words of metta toward that person every morning for the next month. Notice what happens. Notice how your perception shifts. Notice how your heart softens. Notice how the relationship itself begins to transform, not because the other person changes, but because you are relating to them from a completely different place of wisdom and compassion. If this teaching resonates with your heart, if you feel called to walk this path of transforming all your relationships through the power of daily wise speech, please subscribe to this channel so we can continue this journey together. Leave in the comments the phrase we spoke of at the beginning, "I release attachment and embrace impermanence." Let this be your declaration that you are ready to let go of the old patterns of relating that have created so much suffering and embrace a new way rooted in the Buddha's timeless wisdom. The words you speak silently to yourself about others every single day have been creating your relational reality. When you change those words from judgment to compassion, from fear to trust, from demand to acceptance, you change everything. This is not theory. This is the path walked by countless beings who discovered that transformation begins not with changing others, but with changing the words in your own mind. May you speak words of loving kindness daily. May you see all beings with compassion. May you celebrate the joy of others. May you hold all your relationships with wisdom and equanimity. May you discover that when you transform your internal speech, you transform your entire world.